Commonly referred to as a flying tank and the world's only assault helicopter, the Mi-24 has the ability to carry troops and provide firepower simultaneously. The Soviet-era helicopter is playing a vital role in Ukraine's efforts to hold the Russians back. But Ukraine's fleet is small compared to Russia's, with less sophisticated targeting and defensive systems.
Ukrainians are using helicopters in the full spectrum of their functions, but they're very constrained by both numbers and the air defense environment.
Here's why the Mi-24 continues to show up in combat and how Ukraine, despite challenges, is utilizing it to counter Russian adversaries. The Mi-24's popularity can be understood by three key features: armor, speed, and firepower, the last of which is stored here.
Probably the most prominent feature on the Mi-24, and that's the stub wings on both sides here.
These wings are what carry the helicopter's weapons and firepower, which can range from anti-tank missiles to unguided rockets and bombs.
If it were going after vehicles and tanks, it would have anti-tank missiles. If we're going after infantry, it would have more of the unguided rockets.
Toward the front of the aircraft sits an additional piece of firepower, either a 12 or 23 millimeter cannon called a chin gun. This gun is attached to a turret which can slide in multiple directions to engage targets from a variety of angles. The Mi-24s in Ukraine can carry even larger cannons, mounted on the right front side, shown here.
The Mi-24 was designed initially to take on adversary armor. So the Ukrainians are certainly using it to attack Russian armor, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're also using it against Russian infantry.
And while the helicopter can fire artillery, it's also outfitted with protection from the other side. The pilots are protected here by plexiglass and laminated glass.
And the crew are protected by what's called an armored bathtub. And what it means is that there's armor around the pilot and co-pilot in this case that looks a little like a bathtub. In other words, it surrounds them from the bottom and along the sides, not along the top.
While no helicopter is invulnerable to fire, this armor can help it and its pilots survive hits other helicopters can't.
And the reason they're protected on the sides and the bottom is that that's where they might be hit by ground fire. It's difficult to protect them on the top, and in any case, it's unlikely that they would be attacked from above.
The armor is made of titanium, which is strong but also light compared to other armor, contributing to speed.
Speed's important for an attack helicopter because it goes places and puts itself in situations where it will be vulnerable. Transport helicopters are designed to hide, so they will stay low and stay behind terrain to shield them. But attack helicopters have to expose themselves to an adversary in order to get a shot in, and during that period of exposure, they are vulnerable. Speed helps there.
Despite its age, the Mi-24 can fly at around 200 miles per hour.
It can still keep up with modern helicopters, at least in terms of speed.
It gets this ability from two powerful engines and the design of its rotor blades. But the Mi-24's shortcomings have become more evident as the war continues. Early in the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainian helicopter pilots said hitting targets was easier because the Russians weren't prepared for Ukrainian air assaults. But now, that isn't so easy.
There's a lot more Russian air defense along the front line. That means that it's much more difficult for Ukrainian helicopters to operate. They have to stand back, they have to look for weak spots.
This reveals one of the drawbacks of the Mi-24, its lack of sophisticated radar systems.
The reason that the Mi-24 is now considered obsolescent is that many of its systems are not as sophisticated as what you see on more modern aircraft. The Mi-24 doesn't have a search and targeting radar the way that many modern attack helicopters do, for example, the US Apache and some of the newer Russian attack helicopters.
The Mi-24 is also primarily a daytime helicopter due to its avionics.
Newer helicopters have much better nighttime optics. They might have much better views during the day. They have better defensive systems so that they can protect themselves more effectively.
But Ukraine is looking for ways to make the equipment that it has meet its needs. This round device on a helicopter in Ukraine shows what experts say is a countermeasure against infrared missiles, one of the most common threats to helicopters. And in the last year, reports say Ukrainian airmen loaded American Hydra 70mm unguided rockets into Mi-24s. Unguided rockets, while cheaper, tend to require pilots to be extremely accurate. If a pilot is firing an unguided rocket 6,000 meters out, even 1 degree off can result in meters off from the target. But
Hydra 70 rockets with a special kit that goes on the front for guidance can be turned into a precision missile. And what's important is that it gives it a volume of fire that it didn't have before. With the anti-tank weapons that the Mi-24 had, it could take out one target here, one target there, but it couldn't take out large numbers. And the Hydra 70 can do that.
in the short term, these rockets can modernize Ukraine's Soviet-era equipment. But in the long term, Ukraine faces bigger questions about its aging fleet. While Russia has been updating its equipment over the years, including its Mi-24s, Ukraine hasn't been able to do the same.
Their problem has been that these aircraft were built in Russia. When Ukraine and Russia broke relations for defense purposes, the Ukrainians really didn't have a very good way of upgrading their aircraft. The United States has been very aggressive in shopping the world's armament markets to find parts, to find munitions for Ukrainian equipment, and has had some success there. But long term, the Ukrainians want to move towards NATO standard, which will be much more easier to obtain munitions and parts for.